Okay, guys, let's talk about what a function is. The definition of a function is every input can only have one output. Okay, remember that x is our input. So let's write that here. X is our input. Y is our output. That doesn't change. So if you notice in this first table, right here, if you notice that 0 has an output of 2. You see the red arrow pointing to 2. That indicates that 0 and 2 go together. So the input is 0 and the output is 2. There's only one output, so far, so good. If we take a look at the next one, 1 goes to 6. So the input is 1 and the output is 6. 1 only has one output. So that's okay. Now let's take a look at 2 over here. You'll notice that on 2, we have an arrow to 10 and an arrow to 14. That means 2 has two different outputs. It has an output of 10 and an output of 14. An input, the input of 2, can only have one output to remain a function. So the fact that it has two different outputs makes it not a function. Let's take a look at the next table. The next table, it looks like this. And so if we take a look, boy, that's a squiggly line. If we take a look here, 1 has an output of 5. And 2 has an output of 5. And 3 has an output of 5. And 4 has an output of 5. Notice that our inputs, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, don't have more than one output. 1, again, 1 only has one output, it's 5. 2 only has one output, it's 5. 3 only has one output, and so on. It doesn't matter that they have the same output, but what matters is that the input only has that one output. So this is a function. If we look at points, so we're going to look on the bottom, coordinate pairs. If we look on the bottom here, and you'll see a grouping in purple. And the grouping in purple, what I want to look for is I want to look at the x values. So let's look at these x values and make sure that the x values only show up once. It doesn't matter what's happening with the y values, but the x values can only show up once. And since they do, that means every input, right? 0 only has one output, it's 4. 1 only has one output, which is 10, and 2 only has one output, which is 26. That means it is a function. Now, if we take a look at the one on the bottom, let's change the color here. If we take a look at the one on the bottom, we'll look at the points and look at the x's. So 1 only shows up once. It only has one output of 6. But notice 2. 2 has an output of 8 and it has an output of 10. That means it's not a function. If we're looking at a graph and we have a line, we're going to call this, we call it the vertical line test. Actually, I like the red better. So we're going to come back to this line on this graph. And in order to tell if it's a function, when I do the vertical line test, it can only hit one point, which means I'm going to make vertical lines, and it can only ever hit one point on the graph. In this case, yes, it's a function. So let me show you one that's not, so you have an idea of what I'm talking about. Let's say we have a graph that looks like this. Well, let me make it a little bit neater. All right, looks like this. Okay, and if I do the vertical line test, you'll notice that when I do that vertical line, it hits 2 points. That makes it not a function. Okay, and the most common non-function thing that we see is a vertical line. Okay, it's linear, but it's not a function. And you'll notice when I do the vertical line test, notice how many points it's hitting. So that is not a function. And that's how we determine if something is a function or not, if every input can only have one output.